Hey there friends, I put this video together for people to better understand how money is allocated through taxpayer dollars in FEMA and how it goes into particular buckets. First guys, I want to tell you about some friends of mine, X-Tech Tactical. I love these guys. They make a lot of aftermarket stuff for guns that you're probably not going to get in terms of quality with the OEM stuff that comes stock on these particular firearms. More specifically, the magazine selection that they have. They have upgraded magazines, much more durable magazines. In fact, functionally better magazines regarding springs and followers inside. You want to check these guys out. I'm a big fan of theirs. I'm a user of theirs. I'm one of their biggest customers. So check them out, X-Tech Tactical. There's been a lot of talk from the mainstream media, of course the White House, trying to say that Trump is lying about money going to illegal aliens at the border rather than the efforts in Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, all the states that have been affected by Hurricane Helene. In a way, they're right, what they're saying. And there is no shortage of people online, mainly the state-run medias, who are talking about how this is incorrect. White House calls Trump's claim FEMA disaster relief money spent on migrants absolutely false. Now pay attention to the wording. What they're saying is Trump's claim that FEMA disaster relief money is being spent on migrants. Trump FEMA claim debunked. Agency not running out of money because of migrants. The next one, no, Biden didn't take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. And the last one, false claim about FEMA disaster funds and migrants pushed by Trump. You see, these headlines are very specific about how they're using this wording. FEMA says no disaster relief money was spent on migrant aid. Remember, what they're saying is right in your face, and they're lying to your face by omission. FEMA is running low on disaster money, but not because the funds went to, quote, housing undocumented migrants. Of course, the DNC got in on it too. Biden didn't take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. Again, the wording, Biden did not take, quote, FEMA relief money to use on migrants. And of course, the White House had to get into it also. Notice the wording, no money is being diverted from disaster response needs, none. Here's where they almost tell you the truth, but they leave out just enough to make you think Trump is lying. FEMA's disaster relief efforts and individual assistance is funded through the Disaster Relief Fund, which is a dedicated fund for disaster efforts. Disaster Relief Fund money has not been diverted to other non-disaster related efforts. That is a true statement. No disaster relief money for hurricanes has been used at the border. That's because the border has its own line item in the FEMA budget. So you have two different buckets, and I'll show you that here in a second with some visuals that helps explain this a little bit. But if you go to FEMA's own website, you're going to see this information. For fiscal year 2024, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security will provide $640 million of available funds to enable non-federal entities to offset allowable costs incurred by services associated with non-citizen migrant arrivals in their communities. The funding will be distributed through two opportunities, $300 million through SSP allocated and $340 million through SSP competitive. That SSP is extremely important to understand what they're talking about. Here's a visual I put together to better explain this. If you look at the green bucket, that is money that goes to Americans for disaster relief. That green bucket is the bucket of money that they are running out of. That is a budgeted amount of money for disaster relief to assist Americans in the event of any kind of a natural disaster. Notice the much bigger yellow bucket. That money goes to non-Americans, and that is where that SSP that I pointed out in their budget, Shelter and Services Program. That's extremely important to understand. What they're saying is, we're not taking money from the disaster relief bucket and giving it to non-Americans in this Shelter and Services Program. The reason why is because the Shelter and Services Program bucket is already so much bigger, they don't need any money from disaster relief. They didn't budget enough money for disaster relief. Therefore, they're running out of the green bucket, but they're not running out of the yellow bucket, so they don't need to take from the green. They have plenty of money that they already pre-allocated for shelter and services programs. Now remember, folks, this is not money meant to feed little babies at the border who have lost their parents. That's not what this is. This also helps in that, but much of this money is used to transfer, whether it be buses, trains, airplane tickets, to send these people throughout the entire country of America, give them federal housing. And I say federal housing, it's not necessarily Section 8. In some cases, it's actually in hotel rooms. Sometimes they're spending upwards to $1,800 a month for rent for some of these illegal aliens. That comes out of the yellow bucket. It's a big bucket used to send these people everywhere. Now, why don't you hear more about that in Congress whenever they're approving budget dollars? It's because the money doesn't go directly to the illegals. It goes to NGOs. You have probably heard that term. NGOs stands for non-governmental agencies. It's essentially a way to launder money. The federal government takes your taxpayer dollars, pays all of these NGOs, these non-government organizations, in most cases they are 501(c)(3)s, nonprofits. These nonprofits who have a horrible record of budget keeping, number keeping, report keeping, they take this money and through the guidance of the United States government, then they give it to all of these foreigners and illegal aliens to come here in the United States and live a very lucrative and nice lifestyle the moment they step foot in the United States illegally. Billions of dollars come into these NGOs from the federal government of the United States using your taxpayer dollars that are paying illegal aliens to come here and live comfortably and better than many Americans actually live. Now, speaking of the green bucket, which is much smaller than the illegal alien bucket, FEMA's major disaster relief and flood insurance programs are already in debt and need to be refilled each year. The White House's supplemental request uses that as a smokescreen to slip in grant money for their open border operation. FEMA's emergency food and shelter program, that's that yellow bucket that I showed you, it's already being siphoned for over $332 million to assist communities receiving non-citizens released from custody, which means housing migrants here illegally at the border, then transporting them to places such as New York City. Of course, you see the next paragraph. New York's been promised $104 million from this pot already. That's from that yellow bucket. FEMA has already asked for $83.5 million for FEMA Shelter and Services Program, again, the yellow bucket, to nonprofits and local entities to provide support to non-citizens released from DHS custody. That's illegal aliens, if you need a better term for that and a more accurate term. Furthermore, the Department of Homeland Security asked for $800 million, which is $650 million more than the year before, for communities to support migrants who have been released from DHS custody pending the outcome of their immigration proceedings. That's New York, that's Springfield, Ohio, that's all these places across the country where you're hearing of the crime, the rape, the murders from illegal aliens. That's this money. Bear in mind that with the asylum system backlogged as never before, this outcome would be far in the future. So this picture right here demonstrates the incorrect description of what's happening with Hurricane Helene money. The claim is that FEMA money from disaster relief is going to illegal aliens, and that's not accurate. That's not a true representation, and they're accurate whenever they say that this is, they can call it a lie if they want, but they're hiding the truth because this is the wrong word to describe what's happening. There is none of this green bucket money leaving the green bucket for disaster relief for Americans, and that money is not going from the green to the yellow bucket, which is Shelter and Services Program for illegal aliens. That is not happening. Again, the yellow bucket is full. These people are overfilling the yellow bucket by tons. So they don't need more money in the yellow bucket. So they're not actually re-diverting or diverting any of that money from disaster relief. They are using these words to make it look like the whole claim is a lie. And it's actually not. The problem is they have allocated far more money for non-Americans through FEMA in the yellow bucket than they did for the green bucket for Americans. That's the problem. The problem is they budgeted too little for disaster relief, and they budgeted plenty for shelter and services. What we'd like to see is a diversion of money from illegal aliens to Americans. We would like to see you actually take some of that money from the yellow bucket, and instead of crying about running out of money, go ahead and run out of the money for non-Americans and spend it on Americans instead. Because these are the people who generationally have grown up and lived in this country, and they deserve the support and relief from FEMA, not these non-Americans through the Shelter and Services Program. So it's important, maybe share this video, but it's important that we get our wording right. There's no diversion of money. The problem is they have two different buckets that money is being budgeted for, and the one bucket for you and I has run out or is running out, and they're in no danger of running out of the other. So they ain't taking money. We want to see them reallocate money to take care of the Americans who are suffering in Appalachia and all these other states over there who are suffering right now with their little $750 check.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. It's over.